Meeting today, Peter, and to session 2 of Accessible Authors. If it's all the same to you, Peter, if we could just jump right in, that would be fabulous. So I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Fiona, and I am the fundraiser for the charity Children Today. This event, Accessible Authors, is part of a week-long event which is hosted by Children Today to celebrate disability and the power of storytelling. In this session, we're obviously delighted to welcome Peter, who will be reading from his works, The Dot and Ish, which is very exciting. Before we begin as well, I'd also like to introduce our charity to you all. Children Today is a small charity. We are a team of 6 ladies, and we help children and young people from across the UK up to the age of 25 years to access adapted equipment, which is often unavailable from the NHS, and that includes trikes, adapted buggies, sensory equipment, and powered and lightweight wheelchairs. And we are thrilled to be working with our incredible authors this week to bring greater awareness to disability and storytelling. If you or someone that you know, be it friends, family, colleagues, or even fellow students, would like our help to access adapted equipment or support, then you can reach us by email, that's info@childrentoday.org.uk, or by telephone, that's 01244 335 622. This is a completely free event, and we're so happy that you could be with us today. If you are able to, we would love it if you could help us to continue to run events like this by donating as much or as little as you would like. And you can do this by texting the number on the screen, that's 70580, and our keyword authors to donate £3, or you can scan our QR code to access a donation form. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our lovely author for this session, Peter H. Reynolds. Peter, if you don't mind, I'll read a little bio for you so you can feel nice and officially introduced. Peter was born in Toronto, Canada, and has embarked upon an incredible journey as an accomplished writer, storyteller, and illustrator who has been acclaimed around the globe for his best-selling stories for all ages about protecting and nurturing the creative spirit, including his 3 books in his Creatrilogy, The Dot, Ish, and Sky Color. Scoring prestigious reviews from Publishers Weekly, Booklist, and School Library Journal, The Dot has now been published in over 20 languages, and that includes Braille, and has won a number of awards, including the Irma S and James H. Black Honor, Bank Street College of Education, Oppenheim Platinum Toy Award, and the Christopher Medal. And the film version of The Dot went on to win American Library Association's Carnegie Medal of Excellence for Best Children's Video, while the film of Ish was named one of ALA's notable children's videos. So Peter, you can see those are incredible accolades.
I have been busy. For the past several decades.
Well, we're very, very thankful and lucky to have you with us. I was wondering, Peter, if you could start by reading from one of your books. Are you planning on starting with Ish?
Well, do you know what? Maybe in order in the Creatrilogy, there's The Dot, Ish, and Sky Color. So The Dot is the first book in the series. So I think maybe that might be the way to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So everything starts with the dot, a dot, right? Every painting you've ever seen, right? The Mona Lisa started with that very first mark that Leonardo put down on paper, and then the first dot he put on the canvas, and then he kept going, and he didn't stop until he was done. And so that's the theme of all of my work, is to encourage all of you to take what's inside here in this amazing brain and in your dreams and your heart, and and share it with the world. And it starts, right? You can start small, like with a little dot, or one word or one idea, And that's really what this book is about. So, so here we go. This book is published by Walker Books, and here in the United States, Candlewood Press. And I wrote this 22 years ago, and it's still, the dot is still rolling along. So here we go, the dot. Art class was over, but Vashti sat glued to her chair. She wasn't really glued, right? She was just stuck there because she had something to do. What do you think she was doing? She had to do. Her paper was empty. Vashti's teacher leaned over the blank sheet of paper. Ah, a polar bear in a snowstorm, she said. Very funny, said Vashti. I just can't draw. Her teacher smiled. Just make a mark. See where it takes you. Vashti grabbed a marker and she gave the paper a good, strong jab. There. She's not in a very good mood, is she? Her teacher picked up the paper and studied it very carefully. She pushed the paper toward Vashti and quietly said, now, sign it. Vashti thought for a moment, well, maybe I can't draw, but I can sign my name. So she signs her name, V-A-S-H-T-I, Vashti. The next week when Vashti walked into class, she was surprised to see what was hanging above her teacher's desk. It was the little dot she had drawn, her dot, all framed in swirly gold. I could make a better dot than that. She opened her never-before-used set of watercolors and set to work. Vashti painted and painted a red dot, a purple dot, a yellow dot, a blue dot. The blue mixed with the yellow. She discovered that she could make a green dot. Vashti kept experimenting. Lots of little dots in many colors. If I could make little dots, I could make big dots too. Vashti splashed her colors with a bigger brush on bigger paper to make even bigger dots. Vashti even made a dot by not painting a dot. She painted around, left the middle, dot shaped. That is called thinking outside of the dot. At the school art show a few weeks later, Vashti's many dots made quite a splash. Look at all those dots. I wonder how many dots there are. Do you see the little boy? He's very excited. Oh, look, there's Vashti, the dot artist. I'd love to meet her. Vashti noticed that little boy gazing up at her. You're a really great artist. I wish I could draw, he said nervously. I bet you can, said Vashti. Me? No. Not me. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. Vashti smiled. She handed the boy a blank sheet of paper. Show me. The boy's pencil shook as he drew his line. Why do you think his hand is shaking? Yeah, because he's very nervous. Vashti stared at the boy's squiggle, and then she said, and these are the last 3 words of the book, very important words. Please, sign it. And I love this page because of his expression, the little boy's expression. he looked so surprised. He's like, sign it? Like an artist? Like an artist. Ramon, like an artist. And that's his moment. That's when Ramon realized that he was an artist too.
Thank you so much, Peter. That was really, really beautiful.
Thank you.
We've got a little question about the dot just to get started.
Sure.
And that was, how did your journey into becoming an author begin?
Well, I, of course, as a little boy, I like to draw. Paul and I'm a twin, by the way. I have a twin brother, Paul. And when we went to school, we were very excited to learn. And in kindergarten, we were so excited. We wanted to learn how to write. And that wasn't in the kindergarten curriculum in our town, in Boston. That was going to be first grade, but we were very determined. So they actually moved us into first grade. That's how excited we were to get to learn how to write. And when we learned how to write, I thought there were picture books with drawings. Well, I like to draw as well, so I just put them together, and that began my journey. And I spent a lot of time in the library, being inspired by other people's books. But when I realized that I could make my own, that was the beginnings. So Paul and I had our own publishing company when we were in school, and we made magazines and comic books, and also films. Lots of different ways to share stories. And it actually, I was using story throughout my life, but writing stories for my own children. And then I decided that I would share one of these stories, and it was called a story called The North Star, which I wrote about 27 years ago. And that was my very first. I self-published that book, and then Candlewick Press spotted it, and they said, we love your sensibilities. And that publishing journey began about then. So it's really, really fun. Highly recommend it.
It's amazing. So you started writing with your brother then. Do you still enjoy writing stories with your brother?
I do. Well, he was kind of my has always been my champion, and I'm his champion too. But it took him a little bit longer to jump into writing published books. But in the past several years, we've done 4 books together, and we have more on the way. So I was lucky because I was born with my best friend. So if anyone out there is a twin, you know what I'm talking about. There's a special energy, we call it twinergy, and it's a wonderful connection that we have. And if you do not have a twin, find your twin. Maybe you already know who your twin is.
Yeah, I'm very lucky to have a sister, and I completely agree. There's a very special bond between siblings, and I would be delighted to know if the audience have any twins amongst them as well that might share that same special relationship. It appears the Q&A feature's gone a little bit wobbly, so you are welcome to use the chat feature to post your questions, audience. We have a lovely question, which is your story based on a real character? So the character of Vashti, is she based on a real girl?
She was inspired by a real girl. I had an art class that I was doing, and I told the children, just warm up, draw anything you want. And so they got busy drawing, and I saw this little girl, and as I approached her to see what she was drawing, she put her body on top of her artwork. She wouldn't let me see what she was drawing. And I said, "What's the matter?" And she just very quietly turned her head and said, "I just can't draw." And she was in first grade, which is 5 or 6 years old, and that broke my heart to hear someone so young say they could not draw. And at that moment, I thought, I'm going to help her. And of course, my way to help people is to write stories. So how could I write a story that would help this little girl? And so Vashti is inspired by a little girl, and I met a little girl in a coffee shop as I was drawing. This little girl came in and she had a big mop of brown hair, beautiful brown skin, big brown eyes, and she kept looking at me drawing. So I gave her one of my drawings, and I decided I would sign it to her. So I said, "What's your name?" And she said, "Vashti." And I said, "You're the first Vashti I've ever met. I love your name. Can I name my character Vashti?" And she was so excited. And I said, "I can't promise, but I think it could work." So I went home. Vashti sat glued to her chair. Her paper was empty. And it fit. So yes, all inspired by real life.
That's really beautiful. It's nice to know that Vashti is a real young person. 3 Pankhurst would like to know, do you use watercolors in your illustrations, and particularly for your illustrations in the dot?
Absolutely. I love watercolor. I also use gouache, which is a little bit more opaque. And I use an ink pen. So I dip the crow quill pen into the ink, and I will draw that way. Of course, we have computers now, so computers can be helpful, but I really love drawing on paper. I was doodling this morning. Where is my little doodle? Oh, here we go. Just to warm up this morning, I try to make one drawing every day. And of course, I end up making maybe 10. Some days I draw 100 drawings in a day when I'm really on a roll. But so I made a little drawing today. So whenever I see blank sheets of paper, I get very excited. And that's a sign of creativity. If your creativity is turned up to 11, you will see blank paper as something really beautiful and not scary. Some people get frightened, especially adults. By the way, any adults listening, don't be afraid to make your mark, because if we want our children to be brave and to be creative, we should show them what it looks like. So draw with your kids, and remember, please sign your work, as I did. I signed mine, and put it on the fridge next to your kids' artwork as well. So all of my books are designed for all ages, and as you pointed out, that message resonates around the world. So my books are in many languages, and it's so lovely when I go visit. And by the way, I go to England quite a bit because my sisters, Jane and Renee, both live in Melton Mowbray. And so I go to London and I pop on the train and head up to Melton. I've done a lot of my writing there because it's very peaceful and beautiful. And my mom was born in London, so I have lots of relatives there. So I have very strong connections to England. So I'm hoping to go back very soon.
We're so pleased to hear that England is a source of inspiration for you, and I'm sure that a lot of young people who are watching would also agree that there's a lot of inspirational landscapes and stories that we can gather from the places around us. Sohan from For Hawking would like to know, when you were in elementary school, did you think that you would become an author when you grew up?
I'm trying to remember when did that sort of occur to me that it could be. Well, I think because Paul and I were publishing our own work, I already had become an author. But as a career, that probably wasn't until my maybe mid-20s, maybe 30, I began to think that might be something that I could do. I actually was a camp counselor for many years. I worked at a special needs camp near my house. That was my very first job. I wasn't paid that first summer, but it was still, it was a job, and I loved it. I loved working with kids, and I was actually hoping to be a teacher. That was my dream, to be a classroom teacher. But my drawing, I kept drawing and drawing and drawing, and then people started saying, "Oh, could you draw me? You know, our rock band is having a concert. Could you make a poster?" And they give me $5, and I thought, I'm making some money. So the school hired me to illustrate a Spanish textbook that had no illustrations, but it was filled with stories. And they said the students find it quite boring. Could you illustrate the book? So I illustrated the book, and they created transparencies that they would project on the wall. So as they read the stories, they would see my artwork. And I made, I think, almost $300 from that project, which back in 1978 was a lot of money. And I was able to buy my very first car using that. So I think that's when I realized, like, illustrating could be a career. And I stayed with it, which is my advice to anyone listening. Whatever you want to do, right, just keep doing it, because every day, if we do it, we get better and better and better. Of course, we make our mistakes, and then we learn from our mistakes, and that's a good thing. And it makes us a more proficient, whether it's speaking a language or martial arts or singing or playing the guitar or writing. Just keep going and never stop.
That is fabulous advice. I think if you do something you love, it's just the most wonderful gift. We have year 2 asking, who is your favorite author? Who's your favorite author?
Who is my favorite author? Well, I would say, well, the author that really got me excited about reading and using my imagination to write was Roald Dahl. I read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and I fell in love with that book. In fact, it was the very first book that Paul and I went and bought from a bookstore. And being a twin, I got a 50% discount because Paul chipped in the other half of the money. And I still have that book today on my shelf. And then I discovered that Roald Dahl didn't just write one book, he wrote many books. And I discovered The Fantastic Mr. Fox. And eventually I found Matilda, which is one of my favorite books of all time, because it's about the love of reading and storytelling and imagination and what schools could be, that they can be wonderful places, but really only if you have wonderful teachers. So thank you to all the wonderful teachers who decide to dedicate their lives to being Miss Honey, who is the main character in Matilda. If you have not read Matilda, please put it on your to-do list for 2024. Our sister Jane, who, as I say, lives in England, when she was a few years older. So when we were in elementary school, she was in high school, and she would be doing her homework, and she had a Shakespeare class. So she would read us Shakespeare. And in the afternoon, our mom and dad both worked. So we hung out with our sister Jane, and she would read aloud Shakespeare, and which we loved. And then she also read Charles Dickens, lots of Charles Dickens. So I fell in love with Charles Dickens as well. And Dickens and Dahl are they share some of the same DNA, I think, featuring resilient children who are trying to navigate their way in a world that sometimes is very challenging. And so in my work, you might notice that I also have resilient children who are trying to navigate their way through sometimes a very difficult journey, like in the North Star. The little boy is lost and has to find his way through this swamp, and he discovers that there's a map that can help him. Of course, it's the stars above his head. He just was so busy looking at this sign and that sign and being panicked that he didn't take time to look up and notice that there was a map right there guiding him. And so So my favorite books inspired my work, and so I hope that if you're listening today, that you find the book that speaks to you, because it's going to whisper a message to you and will help you on your journey.
You mentioned being resilient, Peter. Can you explain what you mean by resilience, and can you give our audience any advice on how they can be resilient?
Sure. Well, resilient. I like that word, resilient. I'm a word collector, by the way. I love words. In fact, I even wrote a book called The Word Collector. And resilience means the ability to keep going, even if it's tough, right? It's because you have a choice. You could say, this is hard, I'm going to give up. And of course, do we get better at the things that we give up on? No, right? So if you keep going, you will eventually get there. It might take you a bit longer. I was a very slow reader in school. It took me a long time to read a book, but I didn't give up and I got faster. I'm still not the fastest reader, but I enjoy what I read. And I think that's the key, right? If you enjoy it, whether if you're learning a new language or you're drawing or you're playing the cello, whatever it is, if you enjoy it, if it's bringing you some joy, that will be your fuel to keep going.
I think that's really, really fantastic advice, and definitely something that we can learn from as future readers. So before you start reading your next book, Peter, I was wondering, and this is a very tricky question, and it's from Orla from 3 Pankhurst, and it's quite a big one. She would like to know, how many drawings do you think you've done?
Wow, that's the very first time that question has been asked. I would have to do a little calculation, but it's got to be, I mean, tens of thousands of drawings. I'm also an animator, and if you know how animation is done, we have to do many, many drawings to make just even 1 second of motion. So add that to the list. But yeah, that's a very good question. I'm going to ponder that one. I like questions that make me think. Yeah. So Paul, write that down. It's good to have. Remember, if you have a great idea or if you have a great question, write it down. That's why we learn to write in school. Because I don't want you to lose your brilliant ideas or your brilliant questions. So keep some paper handy.
Again, fabulous advice. Peter, are you happy to start reading your next book, which I believe is Ish?
I would be delighted. You were talking about your sister, who feels a bit like your twin, right? You're very close to her, so she's twin-ish, right? She's like your twin, not really your twin, but she's like your twin. So twin-ish is a good segue into Ish. So this is the Creatrilogy. So it's got the 3 books in here, the Dot, Ish, and Sky Color. So we're going to pull out the second book. And if you remember at the end of the book of the Dot, there's that little boy who signs his name proudly, and he becomes an artist, right? He realizes, yes, I'm an artist too. And his name is Ramon, and he gets his own book. So the story continues. He's been inspired by Vashti, and here he is. Ramon loved to draw, and there he is drawing spread out on the floor, which is how I used to draw. Actually, I still do that. This week I was in my studio and I put down a blanket and I drew pictures. Yeah, it's very comfortable. My parents bought us a very fancy art desk, a drafting table, when we were little to encourage us, and we put our clothes on it. It made a very good place to put things. Ramon loved to draw. He loved to draw any time. Look at him late at night drawing, and that's like me late at night. Before I go to sleep, I try to read, And I also try to make a little note in my journal, a drawing, some words, my thoughts. He loved drawing anything, and there he is. He's drawing trash cans, or as they say in England, bins, right? The skip. I like those words, bin and skip. So isn't it funny that he would see trash and think that might be something to draw? Why not? That's a creative thinker. And he also loved to draw anywhere. And of course, he's got a very nice, quiet room where no one will bother him. When you grow up in a big house like us, we had 7 people in our house. So the loo was a very, very quiet place, a little sanctuary. One day, Ramon was drawing a vase of flowers. His brother, Leon, leaned over his shoulder. So there he is, drawing happily. Very, very happily. And then his lovely brother. Do you have a lovely older sibling? Someone who's supportive and kind? Well, Leon burst out laughing. "What is that?" he said. And if you notice, there are details in picture books. So there are words, and then there's information here too. So there's someone right in the background. So when you're reading a book, look for the little details because it's telling you a little bit more of the story. So we'll meet this character in a little bit later. That wasn't very nice of Leon to laugh at his work, right? That was very, very cruel. So Ramon was very, very sad and very angry. Ramon could not even answer Leon. He just crumpled up the drawing and he threw it across the room. We do silly things sometimes when we get angry. You know, have to learn how to take that deep breath and not do silly things like that. But Leon's laughter haunted Ramon. He kept trying to make his drawings look right, but they never did. After many months and many crumpled sheets of paper, Ramon put his pencil down. "I'm done. I quit. That's it." No more drawing for Ramon. Marisol, his sister, was watching him. "What do you want?" he snapped. "I was watching you draw," she said. Ramon sneered. "I'm not drawing. Go away." Marisol ran away, but not before picking up a crumpled sheet of paper. "Hey, come back here with that." Ramon raced after Marisol up the hall and into her room. He was about to yell, but he fell silent when he saw his sister's walls. He stared at the crumpled gallery. And I think you know who made all those drawings. Her brother, Ramon. "This is one of my favorites," Marisol said, pointing. "That was supposed to be a vase of flowers," Ramon said, "but it doesn't look like one." "Well, it looks vase-ish," she exclaimed. "Vase-ish?" Ramon looked closer and he studied all the drawings on Marisol's walls and he began to see them in a whole new way. They do look ish, he said. Ramon felt light and energized. Thinking ishly allowed his ideas to flow freely. He began to draw what he felt. Loose lines, quickly springing out, without worry. Ramon once again drew and drew the world around him. Making an ish drawing felt wonderful. He filled his journals. Tree-ish, house-ish, boat-ish, afternoon-ish, fish-ish, sun-ish. Ramon realized that he could draw ish feelings too. excited-ish, peace-ish, silly-ish. Is ish art inspired? Ish writing. He wasn't sure if he was writing poems, but he knew they were poem-ish. And I made a little poem for him. Ponder, ponder, dream yonder, pond, yond, gleam, wander. By Ramon. One spring morning, Ramon had a wonderful feeling. It was a feeling that even ish words and ish drawings could not capture. He decided not to capture it. Instead, he simply savored it. And Ramon lived ishfully ever after. The end ish. And it's the end ish because there's another book called Sky Color, and maybe we don't have time to read it today, but maybe you can go to your library and find it, or your bookstore, and maybe you can, if you have a twin, they can chip in and you get it 50% off. So my friends, that is ish, and I hope that word ish comes in handy when you're worrying about your drawing, trying to make a tiger. Remember, it only has to be tiger-ish. That means it has tiger energy. It even just reminds you of a tiger, or you were inspired by a tiger. And so if you go to a museum, sometimes you'll see a painting, and it's titled Waterfall, and you look at it and you say, I don't see a waterfall. But you know what? The artist felt that waterfall, and he made, or she made, marks that were inspired by a waterfall in their mind. So it doesn't matter how it comes out on the paper. As long as in your heart you knew, yes, I am inspired by a waterfall. And you start splashing your paints. And when you look at it, you say, yeah, that feels good. And then remember, sign it, because when you sign your work, it means I'm proud. I'm proud of my marks. And try not to crumple your artwork, right? Save your artwork, because it's fun to see. Oh, that's how I drew when I was 5 years old. This is how I drew when I was 10. This is me at 20. This is me at 120, which is one of my goals in life. 120 seems to be about the right number of years, because I have a lot of books to do and a lot of films to do. I'm working on a animated film right now, based on my book, The Smallest Gift of Christmas. And I'm also developing a show about creativity that will be live action. So I'm busy. And I also love traveling. I love visiting schools. I love to visit and hang out with great teachers as well, and families. Here in the United States, we do something called Creativity Family Night. And so my team at Fablevision and the Reynolds, I have a not-for-profit called Reynolds TLC, Teaching, Learning, Creativity. And so Reynolds TLC team goes to schools, and we invite parents and people in the community and the kids, and we usually throw in some food, and we eat, and then we there are lots of creativity activities that the grown-ups and the kids do together, because that's the mission, is to get everybody inspired and creating and making things, not just consuming, because there are a lot of things to consume, like video games and television. But do you know what's more fun? Making your own video game, making your own story, making your own TV, your own film, telling your story, because your voice is very, very important.
We've got lots of lovely schools saying thank you so much. So thank you so much from Wharton, Church of England School Year 2. They're really happy to join us here today. It seems to me, Peter, that a lot of your stories are about, bouncing back, even if someone's not very nice, looking at all of the positive things that can come out of that. Do you have any advice for any young people who might want to overcome someone making fun of them?
Sure. Yeah. It's I was bullied in school. I was, of course, growing up in a British household in America, we had British accents, so we were made. They would tease us for that. They were always looking for something different. If something's different, people like to, unfortunately, bully you. But you know, I mean, if you have a friend, even if it's one friend, stick with that friend. I was lucky because I had a twin. Paul was my champion. So as long as you've got your one champion, you can weather through most anything. But just remember, you know, you're so unique. There's only one of you. Even I'm a twin, but I realize there's only one Peter H. Reynolds. There's a Paul Reynolds. But even being a twin, and they say identical, we're not identical. I'm my own person. I wrote a book called Be You, which will cheer you on, so you can read that one. I also wrote a book about me in school. I had trouble focusing. Paul was very good at focusing. I had a different kind of brain, and it liked to go different places, and it was hard for me. And so I wrote a book called Happy Dreamer, about an amazing, delightful, happy dreamer. And that's a story about me growing up. And I hope that it sort of if it reminds you of you, we are kindred spirits, because I love happy dreamers. We are happy, we're optimistic, and yeah, we like to dream. And sometimes it takes a little effort to focus, but I learned how to focus. In fact, I use my artwork to help me focus. So when the teacher was teaching something, I would illustrate on my notepad what they were talking about, and it actually helped me listen to my teacher. And I'll just mention one other book. It's called I'm Here. It's a very quiet book. It doesn't get as much attention as my other books, but it's a very important book. It's about a little boy on the playground who is ignored by the other kids on the playground. But one little girl finally goes over and sits down with him and connects with him. And he likes to make paper airplanes, so they make paper airplanes together. And that was inspired by a friend of mine who has a son on the autism spectrum, and he doesn't have a lot of words. And she said to me, I wish that other people would understand that just because Matthew doesn't have a lot of words, that he still would like to have a friend. And so we all have to remind ourselves that there are people that may not be able to say, hey, come play with me, but they would love to have a friend. So that book celebrates that idea. So that's called I'm Here. And I have a whole lot of books that are all designed to give us little tools to be brave, to be confident and resilient, and also just celebrate the journey, and realize that when you find your North Star, that can be a light and a guide for you. So I hope everybody has their North Star. If you want to make a star map, I love making my little star map. Each star is something that is important to me. It could be a dream, someone who inspires me, a book that inspired me, and you can create your own map, and that's your one of a kind map to help you on your journey. So I'm wishing everyone an amazing journey. So I'm not sure if there are more questions, or are we coming in for a landing?
I think we're coming in for a landing. Thank you so much for your time, Peter. I'm sure that everybody will agree that it has been delightful to have you with us. And we've had some fabulous and insightful questions in today's session. And you've given us a real insight into how to be resilient and how to be positive and how to embrace our gifts and talents. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And you have such a great mission. I'm cheering you on, and I'll be coming to visit you soon. So put the kettle on.
That would be lovely. Before we log off and conclude this session, I'd just like to say, if you enjoyed today's session, please don't forget to like us and interact with us on social media. You can get us on Facebook at Children Today UK Charity, Instagram at Children Today Charity, and Twitter at Children Today. And you can tag us using the hashtag Accessible Authors. Thank you so much for your time, and have a lovely afternoon, everybody.